Well, thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to dig into the papers right here and also let you know what has been happening across the world. Joining us for that, Dr. Kwame Asante. He joins the conversation, political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for staying. I see that smile creeping on your face. Let's start with an interesting development, Doc. Now, we've heard the ranking member of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, expressing worry over the demolition of the Bulgarian embassy in Accra. What do you even call them? Land guards, some security personnel have been supposedly pointed at being implicit or complicit, I should say, in all of this. I don't know whether you've seen that story and what your immediate reaction is. The photos that we've seen are very troubling, to say the least. And of course, coming from the international political point, or a consul comes into question, that is foreign land. And this is like an act of war. Or am I missing something?
It's Ben, it's very unfortunate. Listening to your network this morning, I felt very sorry. One, it appears to me that due diligence was not done before you go into demolition. When you have done the due diligence. Very, very unfortunate. If you look at in terms of international relations, very unfortunate. What type of relationship do you want to build between Ghana and Bulgaria? Right. That their facility, which is considered as their land here, is being destroyed and all that. It's very unfortunate. But you see, I don't want to believe that the government is complicit in that. Government, I don't think, has a hand in that. And I am sure government will be able to rise up to that, situation. It is also unfortunate that we are hearing issues of land guards in this matter. Do we still have them in this country?
That is the question, because they are supposed to be illegal. Their activities are not even legitimate, so to speak.
Yes, they don't need to exist in this country. We have proscribed the activities by law. So why are they being mentioned here? And what is the police doing about this? I know that the government of this country will take up bold steps to deal with it. It has cost the people of Bulgaria, so that we continue on a good, tangent. I am hopeful that this will be done with dispatch, so that we don't incur the wrath of other members of the international community with regard to this issue. It's very unfortunate. And then the police will also handle the so-called land guards and then deal with them ruthlessly. Because today there is a law which says that land guards should not exist in this country. So if we have semblance of them in this country, then they must be rooted out of this country.
And while I agree with you, and you spoke about the fact that no state would want to do something of this nature. But in the end, when some of these things happen, it is always the state that has to, or the government that has to bear the brunt of whatever has happened, whether it is the failure of the Lands Commission or whichever entity, it is government that bears the brunt of it. You now have to engage in diplomacy to deal with the situation. So what remedial measures do you feel should be adopted? You remember in 2020, we had the issue of the Nigerian embassy and its facility and all of that. If you recall, that too came into question. So in a short span of years, we've had two incidents with two foreign missions, the Nigerian High Commission and then the Bulgarian embassy.
That you saw how government dealt with the first one. I'm sure it's the same spirit that government is going to work with this one, so that institutions which are working on behalf of the state will not create unnecessary problem for government to bear. It is unfortunate. Government sitting somewhere dealing with its own matter, and the time you realize an institution, a body that is supposed to do things on behalf of government, create problem for government. It's unfortunate. Lands Commission must up their game and must be able to set up properly and look at these things carefully before they undertake such action. It is very unfortunate that this action will be taken and later they come back to say we are sorry. We are sorry doesn't solve.
Look, right before I get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper, Doc, I just want to find out very quickly from you. I'm sure you follow the sequence of the carnage on our roads and what has been happening. 469 deaths within January and February. We're also seeing, just in a span of days, 17 people losing their lives. Accidents back to back. and a gas explosion, or not an explosion, so to speak, but a gas tanker, catching fire and all of that, and people going round it to take photos, forgetting what had happened in Apiace. When you look at all of these happenings and the fact that though the numbers in terms of deaths and accidents are slightly lower.
Ben, it's very, 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 very unfortunate. Even when you lose one person, it's bad enough to talk about it. We want our people alive so that they can help build Madagana. Right. My worry is that, look, when we want to deal with this thing, we blame it on drivers and all that. It is true that they also contribute to the problem we have on our hands. Careless driving, some without license,
inattentiveness,
and not adhering to the rules of the game with regard to driving and all that. But there is something that government must also shoulder. What is it? We pay street lights. This is where traffic do not work. It doesn't work. You have to use your own calculation to drive through. Can you imagine this? Who is taking responsibility for this?
Doc, where did you say you were? Did you say the Holy Spirit
Breaking
Cathedral?
down of what? Traffic facilities. Yes, when you're driving from Electoral Commission towards the Holy Spirit Cathedral, that traffic light, the one that turns to City Campus, Tigo, doesn't work. You need to use your own imagination to drive through. Can you imagine that? I mean, this can be fatal one day, and nobody is trying to take responsibility and doing. Meanwhile, we have authorities who are responsible for this. What are they doing? So, box up with, attitude of drivers, and then even design of the roads. Some places you realize that the design of the road contributes immensely towards accident. We have not looked at all these things in totality. If we want to deal with this, we must, make sure that we don't turn ostrich in this direction, and that we deal with these things head on. Otherwise, all the time we'll come here, come and complain, and then go to sleep. The next day we'll have accidents on our hands. Let us remember that we need to build this country,
right? And
that we can't afford to lose them. It creates a very bad image for this country. Some people have been given responsibility to take up on these matters must be up and do those who can do work, because this government doesn't need to descend and come down to instruct people to do their work. Well,
thank you.
Once you are paid, you must be.
Thank you so much, Doc. And maybe just a quick addition to what you've said, about 50% of the traffic lights not working, at least when it comes to the Greater Accra region. That is a statistic from the National Road Safety Authority, and something really that we ought to digest. But it's interesting, and I think it's a good opportunity to put this out there. Yesterday, I was interacting with Chief Inspector Joban of the MTTD. And one of the things he told me was that, look, how about we've done this with our street lights, some of them. How about we have traffic lights that use solar? Do you get it? So they don't depend on electricity, because sometimes it is owing to power outages and so many other dynamics. So over to you, NRSA, urban roads and all of that, those involved to ensure that maybe our street lights can be on most of the time. But let's get into the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's dive in, Doc. Printing textbooks locally, patriotic gesture. That's according to printers, and members of the Ghana Printers and Paper Converters Association have said the decision of the government to cede the entire printing of textbooks locally is a patriotic gesture which must be implemented to the letter. Quick one to run by you. The reality, Doc, and I've published books, my own books. When you self-publish, you know what it's like. When you publish in Ghana, oftentimes, depending on where you're going and what you're looking at, the cost would be higher than if you published in, and I don't want to mention countries' names, but let's say in the East, in Asia, or maybe in some even Western countries, and brought them back to Ghana. And the dynamics are different. There are so many factors involved. And I know many people, I have friends who are doing same. I have not done so. Both times I've published my own book. Government may afford to do this, but I am feeling that generally when we look at the landscape, we should be doing more so that more and more people can publish right here in Ghana. What is your take on that?
It's a difficult business. It is a difficult business because cost of printing is, and sometimes it takes you out of business. What is more is that when you get these books printed, then people find other means of getting them through soft copies and all that. And the state is doing its best to protect some of these things, but we still have problems. So it compounds the problem and make it unattractive to people to go into publication. And let us remember that no books and whatnot, you need them. They are the body of knowledge that you need to be able to put together and to address your problems. So once we begin to have such difficulties, then it's a problem. We need to be sober on this, reflect on this, and help to build this thing once and for all. Materials for printing, we need to work at it so that the prices go down. And then publishers also would, from that point, give us realistic prices. Otherwise, we'll continue to have this business. And at the end of the day, you are likely not to have books from Ghanaian publishers, but outside. And this worry it affects our income generation activities within the country, where we create the jobs here and go and give it to other countries, other people. We can save this situation and create jobs for our people here. We need to be up in this matter and up our game in this regard.
Well, moving on from there, there's also the story, coups cannot address challenges. President reiterates story. President has stated that coups have never been and will never be the solution to Africa's political, economic, and security challenges. He indicated that the reappearance of coups in Africa in all their forms and manifestations must be condemned by all, since they undermined the continent's collective bid to rid itself of the menace of instability and unconstitutional changes in government. He was of the strong view that the condemnation of coups without corresponding action would do very little, and called for stiffer and deterrent measures against the risks of coups, the factors involved. And there's also talk about the fact that those manipulating constitutions, civilian rulers who manipulate constitutions, to get third terms and fourth terms and what have you. And our records are replete with such instances on the continent, should face stiffer penalties. But is this not just more rhetoric? Because the AU have failed woefully in dealing with this situation. Is it stiffer penalties, stiffer deterrence we need? What more do we need?
We need a lot. Ben, we need a lot. Why am I saying this? There are causes, there are things that trigger coup d'etats in the sub-region and in Africa, any part of the world.
Right.
Some address governance challenges and defects within governance so that nobody has any feeling of overthrowing a constitutionally elected government. That aside, let us also remember that yes, when coup happens, what next? Coups do not produce the right environment for economy to grow. So for me, there is nothing like canvassing for coups with the hope that they will improve the economy. They will not. We have seen it in this country. 1960 people into believing that they have the magic wand to turn things around. But at the end of the day,
while I agree with you, Doc, while I agree with you completely, some would also, and this is so we can have a debate, some would also point to the regime of Ignatius Coup and tell you, look, we fared pretty well. We said, Yintia, the Bretton Woods institutions exited Ghana. Before long, we were doing well. I mean, we shored up. Those were the times of Dr. A.O. Abudu. They held the plenteous harvests and all of that. We were pretty well to do. Some point to that and say, not to justify a coup, but say that it's not all bad when it comes to military regimes. What's your reaction? Did you get that, Doc? Asasante is a bit... Doc, are you with us? Just say hello if you can hear me.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you get the question?
The last bit, I missed it. If you can, give it to me again,
basically
I'll be
saying,
fine.
not in support of military regimes, but some have said that sometimes we over-denigrate military regimes. And they point to the regime of Ignatius Kutu Echampo, Operation Feed Yourself, Yentia, and other policies that have apparently worked very well for us, economically and beyond. And they say that sometimes we overdo it when we criticize the military regimes. Your take?
Yeah, I disagree. And I disagree vehemently. Soldiers cannot do anything for us in terms of civilian regime. When you talk about the issue of Achampong and his performance, it's a very controversial one because Buzia, all the things that you see, a number of them that were credited to Achampong were not his own work. They were work that were done by Buzia, but only bear fruit during Achampong regime. That is a fact which must be recognized. And we want to also say that during Achampong's own time, there were a lot of abuses. Is that what we want? A lot of, bad governance where a lot of things went wrong. Is that what we want? Look, for me, a moribund democracy is far better than the so-called military regime that delivered the so-called public good. I disagree vehemently. What we need is that if you have a democracy and there are problems, yes, you look at the democratic process, use them to fight the democracy, to strengthen its frontiers, but then to resort to, calling for coups that at the end of the day, we are going to regret. Because we have seen you find it difficult to survive within that country. I have lived it in 1979, from 1979 to date. So I speak with authority that, and as a student of military politics, I know what I mean. So look, democracy, I know, has its own challenges, but we can do that when we are conscious and we are prepared to deal with the problems that come with democracy head on. We have seen reversals within certain parts of the world, such as Latin America and all that. And those should serve as what pointers for us in order to deal with problems of democracy than the blanket call for coups as a panacea. Make it work and then deliver the public goods so that at the end of the day, it brings smiles on the faces of all people in this country.
Quick one as we wrap up on the Daily Graphic newspaper and quickly blaze through the others. I'll seek review. Justice Abdullahi, you remember he took this matter to court that has now brought the Apex Court to that ruling 7-0 concerning quorums, concerning deputy speakers voting and all of that. What is your quick take if you've taken a look at the Supreme Court's ruling and reasoning? And what do you make of it, the sort of responses that have come from the different sides of the political spectrum?
Yes, when you look at the ruling, I said it on this platform that if we want to deal with the problem that confront Parliament today, then somebody must trigger that process to go to the court and then, ask for an interpretation of the law. The Supreme Court had delivered on that. For me, it is the best way to go. If you have other additions, we can add. But some people are speaking from the point of view that, look, the Supreme Court cannot interfere in the work of Parliament. I beg to differ. Because, you see, in a democracy, institutions are there, and each one is tasked with a responsibility. If you look at when you have conflict between any of the arms of government, it is the judiciary that comes in. The issue of separation of powers, you cannot conclude anywhere, not even mighty America, who started this concept, right? It's a meaningful definition of separation of powers ends with checks and balances, so that yes, the bulk of the function of Parliament is given to them to perform, but slices of such functions are given to other departments of state to perform, i.e. the Supreme Court or the judiciary for that matter. So if the judiciary comes in to interpret, then we should not see it as prying into the area of what. I also have a little problem with the ruling. With respect, my problem is that, yes, are we saying that somebody can preside and at the same time, cast his vote? Then the conversation could also be extended to the issue of why can't you also allow them to also be part of the debate? Then you realize that it becomes a very difficult and a very complex matter. I think that the review, if it qualified, because let us remember that there are grounds at it and then consider it. But for me, it's a good step we can build on, and that mischief that we have in Parliament will be dealt with once again. But let us be sober, reflect on all the dissent that we have had with regard to this issue, And then at the end of the day, something meaningful will come and help the work of Parliament so that it brings smile to all of us. We need the judiciary and we need the
right.
As well as what?
Okay, let's look at the Ghanaian Times.
Negative.
Sure. I was losing you briefly, but thank you, Doc. Let's move on to the next batch of stories in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Make use of RTI. Kojo Ponkroma tells academia and the media, and I followed this interesting development. Of course, we know of some of the challenges that have been faced by those who have tried with it, and I agree with him. We ought to do more with it. It's just the frustration about even charges and all of that when you're seeking information that make it a bit convoluted, cumbersome. But at least I feel it's a justified call. There's also this one. Two quick stories I want you to address there, Doc. Open Ghana's land borders. Minority urges government. And in fact, some people have been talking about the fact that even the COVID-19 restrictions ought to be made more lax. We've had discussions yesterday. Dr. Patrick Kumar-Boaje, Director General of the Ghana Health Service, said, in fact, there were plans in the works. A committee was meeting and working on that. But what is your very quick reaction to this? Time for us to open our land borders. There are economic consequences of it. It's long spanning, and already we are facing an economic crunch. So what's your quick reaction?
These decisions are taken on sober reflection, and we are guided by a whole lot of factors. The security of this country will be the right people to look at this a breather. That's normal with normal human life. But all that we need to do is that those who are in charge of the apparatus, the security apparatus of this state, should be able to look at it critically and consider the current situation we have our hands, i.e. the economic pressures and all that, and see whether we are in the rightful period of time for the borders to be open. It shouldn't be just an ordinary decision, which I know government is not oblivious of that fact. No. A careful consideration will be done, and whatever the security situation, they will brief the president, and if the need be for the borders to be open, it will be open. Let us not play politics with it. These things are carefully thought out programs, and that if you want to take a second look to arrive at a second decision, then the same process must be followed, so that at the end of the day, we all get to our destination.
On page 3, we also, or if they proceed with treason felony, and Justice Remsai, the lead counsel, has called for prosecution, to come to a halt, so to speak, because there's an absence of summary evidence. In fact, Bakavoma himself has said that, let's do this. Let's go to court. Let's proceed with this matter. And some have said that the state does not have what it takes to actually charge him for treason felony. Even when it comes to murder, serious crimes in the state, you need to prove, will tell you, it's going to be a very tricky affair for the state, owing to the fact that he just put this on social media. The evidence that he would have been able to, execute something like this is rather far-fetched. But he's been at the district court level for over a month now, which means he's not been granted bail. Some feel this is the state abusing the powers that it wields, especially the executive.
And so the legal nuances, I will be very much bankrupt of that. So let's leave it with the lawyers who have what it takes to assess the situation and educate us. Let us remember that this type of exercise go a long way to inform, educate, and then give our people the hope to support democracy at all times. So I will defer this thing to the lawyers so that they can give a detailed analysis so that we all learn and follow.
When you look at the final newspaper, vibrant youth wings are MPP's pillars, but a country where they feel at the grassroots level things are not going well. We've had these discussions week after week, and it appears each week brings new dynamics in terms of infighting within the NPP at the grassroots level, or what in the NDC you would call the branch level. Is the party failing to nip this in the bud since it keeps coming up, Doc? And what could be the impact?
Yeah, from what we are seeing, it's appeared to me that these are the things that incur the wrath of followers of Polka Party, and they vent out their grievances in voting in a certain particular direction. I am surprised that the party up to now seems not to be cared about what is going on. Now you are seeing violence, Yendi. It's a sorry story. But the party, if they really want to up their game, they must bring in sanctions immediately and stem the tide. Let us remember that all these so that it can be thrown to the public when we are coming forward elections. And the MPP must be very, very careful about this. And then another problem associated with this is that when you continue on this tangent, that you see violence, you see people who are not satisfied with the electoral processes, you create all manner of problems that some of them can lead to skirt and blood voting. You can also have independent candidates emerging, especially in strongholds or places where you have a slim majority, you are likely to lose them. So it should be a wake-up call for the party to right now act very fast if they want to break the heat. Otherwise, I'm afraid they are going to have problems during the campaign.
Let's do Republic Press. There's no constituency Akufo-Addo hasn't touched with development. That's according to Samira Baumia. There's no constituency Akufo-Addo hasn't touched with development. The second lady saying that. There's also painter jailed 20 years for defiling, impregnating girlfriend's 13-year-old daughter. But there's this interesting one. We're back where we have the ECG's MD in the picture again, Doc. ECG workers demand removal of MD. In the midst of that, there's also this interesting bit. The ECG has been out there, and it's interesting. The Ministry of Finance itself owes ECG, about the KIA, for example, millions of CDs. Your quick reaction to the bit about the ECG boss and the fire once more, and the fact that so many state institutions owe the ECG. We know about the problems the ECG faces. Sometimes it's not even able to execute certain things, expand, and all of that on the back of government, the state, owing another state entity. How do we get ourselves out of this?
If you look at the first question and the second one you are posed to me, it all boils to the fact that there are problems with management. It's clear. Because why do you say they are not ready to pay? Then what are you doing? All right. Imagine the company belonged to you. Would you have acted the same way? Sometimes we treat state institution with lip service. And that is the result of some of the things we are seeing. We need people who are bold, who are courageous, and who have the sense of responsibility of, working for their daily bread. That's all. So if you are a leader and you cannot provide that service, then you are likely to be confronted with with rank and file about your work. It's a problem, and that the board must be able to sit and look at all these things and see how best they can deal with it. But for me, the ECG going out to disconnect people, I have no problem with that. If you owe, you need to pay, and that you can now want to start, strengthening the frontiers of their work and make sure that they get the right revenue. It is true that they have difficulties and all that, but you can also owe them. Where are they going to get resources to run the organization?
Right.
We owe them so much. The money that were earmarked for the payment of all these bills, where have they gone to? We need to investigate this and then make sure that we ensure proper, management of our resources. Governance is nothing but the use of resources to make life better. So if you can make better use of resources, I'm afraid you are not governing. You are doing something else.
Let's look at, and this is how we're going to wrap the conversation, Doc. Business and Financial Times, on page 3, it says CD to fall 20% over next 12 months. 20%. Already we're seeing what is happening against the American dollar, the greenback. Now that's according to RMB Markets, the corporate and investment division of First Rand Bank. I wouldn't have you, there's not enough time to respond to that, but I want you to rather, Doc, in concluding, to react to what has been happening in Boku. Boku has been a long-standing problem, chieftaincy land problem that we've had in this country. It has reared its ugly head again. In some 30 seconds, what is your quick reaction, and why does it keep coming up?
You see, all the time when issues like this happen, we are quick to set committees or commissions to investigate. But what do we do with the report?
Right.
We allow them to sit or lie on decks and all that. implementation of these things to the letter has created all manner of problems for us, and the state has not learned from this. It is unfortunate. If we really want to deal with these problems which affect our political system, we need to be quick and fast on these things and then respond to the needs of the people. Otherwise, unfortunately, we are likely to have a ritual of all these things, which in actual fact shouldn't be the case. What are we doing to ourselves? We need to liberate our people through careful solution so that they can also move on and do their businesses in time.
Doc, nagode, Mauna Yao, Nyamisha Bebre, and have a good day.
I said, I'm most grateful.
That's how we wrap up on the news review. Coming up next, sports, and my very own Manchester United capitulated last night to Atletico Madrid, if you want to sound Castilian, losing by 1-0. They were pipped, but honestly, Manchester United did not deserve to progress. But who am I? Muftau Nabila Abdullahi has the details up next in sports. Stay.